Hello, my name is Aubrey. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of Recent Reads. So I debated whether I wanted to actually make this video or not because most of the books in this video were in either my best of 2024 books or my worst of 2024 video, but there were just enough books that I didn't get to talk about that I decided that I was going to go ahead and make this video and do another recent reads. So I'm going to be wrapping up everything that I read from my last recent reads, which was in October, like right during the hurricane, up until the end of January. And I'm going to save everything that I've been reading in February to do its own wrap up because I would really like to get back to like monthly TBRs and monthly wrap ups. The first book that I have to talk about is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. And this is one of the books that I read right after the hurricane had hit. So right after like the power went out and the water went out and the cell towers went out and there was nothing to do but like sit on the deck and read. We are following two characters, Emery and August. Emery's life has been forever changed after the murder of her high school best friend. And even worse, her high school boyfriend, August, was accused of that murder. Because of this, August fled the small, sleepy, magical island that they both live on. And Emery has spent most of her adult life trying to forget about this horrible thing that happened. However, when August shows up with his mother's ashes in order to be buried on the island, old feelings come up, unsolved mysteries. The island itself starts to seemingly like wake up and be sending the inhabitants of this island some omens and messages. And I just really loved how atmospheric this was. I loved the writing. I loved the vibe, I guess. It was like the mix of like this sleepy, magical place with this like dark, disturbing murder mystery. I liked the romance between Emery and August. I liked this like small town on this island and just like the weird like ethereal magic going on. It worked for me. I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4.25 stars. It made it onto my best reads of 2024. So yeah, Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. Highly recommend. Next, I read Madwoman by Chelsea Beaker. This was the second book that I read during the hurricane when the power was out and the cell towers were out and there was nothing else to do. And I'm pretty sure I read all of this in one day. It's a contemporary fiction novel that has a lot of like thriller mystery elements. Like I don't know that I would fully categorize this as a mystery thriller, but it does have like a pulsing thrillery mystery undercurrent, if that makes any sense. We are following our main character Clove, and Clove is doing her absolute damnedest to like embody, the best way I can describe it is like the that girl vibe. Her whole thing is about, you know, eating very clean and being the perfect mother and being the perfect wife, living this like upper middle class white privileged life. She wears organic clothes and she does like yoga or Pilates and she's like taking her celery shots. You know what kind of woman I'm talking about. The thing about Clove is that her whole life is built on a lie. Her name is not Clove. She is not who she says she is. And she is running for her life from a past that just seems to have its claws in her. And just when she thought that her life was safe with her very safe husband and her two beautiful children and their big expensive house, she gets a letter from a women's prison. She knows she's in trouble and her beautiful sparkly life starts to unravel around her. So we find out pretty early on that the thing that she's running from is the murder of her abusive father by her mother. I don't know, there were just so many things that I loved about this, especially when I was reading it. I just loved Clove as a character and I really related to her in so many different ways. There's a lot in here about like grocery, as in like grocery stores and like grocery stores, especially like high-end grocery stores, being full of this like hope and promise. If only your diet were clean enough and your life were pretty enough, somehow that's going to like fix you or complete you. It was just a very relatable thing to read about for, you know, just personally like a phase that I went through in my early to mid 20s. I felt very called out by this book because I got the sense that like a good bit of this was supposed to be like over the top and ridiculous, and it was, and I felt called out. I enjoyed that part of the novel. I also felt like there were some really interesting conversations about abuse and like cycles of abuse and how it feels to be the product of abuse. The thing that struck me about this novel that I found so profound was this idea of like Clove never wanting to be her mother. Obviously, like she has spent so much of her life seeking out safe relationships, like seeking out men that she knew for sure would never hit her and would never abuse her the way that her father had abused her mother, but also having to work really hard to not be her father as well. As in there being this innate anger and rage in her, you know, not just towards her father, but just like in general, right? Like living with that kind of abuse just like leaves such deep anger that you can't get rid of. And there would be moments when like she's out with her kids, for example, and they're maybe starting to whine or complain or beg or whatever, you know, things that like little kids do. And that kind of behavior triggering her with this absolute overwhelming rage of like, how dare you whine? How dare you cry? Like you have it so good. I have spent my whole life trying to give you a life where like you don't know how good you have it. Seeing how hard she had to work to like talk herself down from those like outbursts or tantrums to not be her father. There was just something about that I had never read about before and had never seen anyone put into words quite this way that I just really appreciated. So we get flashbacks into Clove's past, and in the book, Clove's father refers to his violent outbursts as his dark traveler, and she frequently references like having to keep her own dark traveler at bay. I just thought there were so many things about this that were so well done, interesting to think about, and mostly I just really liked Clove as a main character. So that was a lot of it. I liked the tone of voice that this book was written in. I thought it had a really good balance of like being funny, being terrifying, being relatable, and just being like compulsively readable. It was exactly what I needed on that particular day in which I read it, where I just like desperately needed a distraction, and this gave that to me. At the time when I was finished with it, I gave it 5 stars. So yeah, Mad Woman by Chelsea Beaker. I really, really loved this one. And if you like stories about like really complicated, messy women, I think you would really enjoy this. All right, next up, I read Whoever You Are, Honey by Olivia Gatwood. This is a like literary fiction sci-fi blend-ish, and I'm putting that in quotations. We are following 2 characters. We're following Mitty, who I believe is in like her late 20s, early 30s, and she is living with one of her mom's oldest friends, Bethel, and they're roommates. Mitty is like kind of awkward, kind of insecure. We get the sense that she's maybe running from something, or at least that something has happened in her past that she's like ashamed of and not willing to talk about. Our second main character is Lena, and Lena moves in across the street from Mitty and Bethel. Lena is, for all intents and purposes, a trophy wife. She is stunningly beautiful. She's married to a very rich tech bro guy, Sebastian. She is just kind of like a stay-at-home trophy wife. She doesn't have to work, but that leads to a kind of lonely and purposeless existence for her. And so she and Mitty end up striking up a friendship because they keep running into each other as neighbors. And Lena has this like instant interest and fascination with Mitty and Bethel and like their living arrangement. Lena is really like charmed by them and drawn to them. And pretty early on in the book, we discover that there has been this murder on the news that people are hearing about. And apparently some super important tech guy was shot and murdered by one of his interns. And the rumor going around is that he was shot and murdered because he was working on some form of advanced AI, and that advanced AI was becoming sentient. From there, the question for the readers is Lena a robot? And did Sebastian have anything to do with this murder? Because they were working in the same department, and this other tech bro guy was like one of his buddies. It's all just kind of murky and unclear, and Lena is struggling with like her memory, and just in general, she just sort of like feels off about herself and her body, and she feels a little bit other, and she doesn't sort of understand that feeling either. Mitty, who is gay, is like struggling with her crush on Lena. Like she has this kind of obsession with Lena because she's so beautiful and because she's like giving Mitty attention. I mean, you know, that's kind of the dynamic. I felt like there was a lot to like about this novel. There were a lot of conversations that I thought were very, very interesting, and points that the author was making that I really just appreciated somebody putting words to. I felt like there was a very strong theme of feeling like the worst thing you can do as a queer person is make non-queer people uncomfortable with your queerness. And I gave some more examples in my worst of video, so I will link that down below. And so I really liked and enjoyed like the queer themes and the queer conversations that were being held in here. I liked some of the conversations about gentrification in here. Unfortunately though, the whole like robot murder mystery plotline goes nowhere. It completely fizzles out by the end of the novel, and we don't really get any answers. And that just, I don't want to say it was the best part of the novel, but it was like a really cool part of the novel. And I was excited to see where it was going to go. And I wanted that plotline to be a little bit more punchy, a little bit more exciting. And it really just sort of fizzles out and we don't get an answer. And it's not really clear. Yeah, it was disappointing. I think I left this at 3 stars because, like I said, there were things that I did enjoy about it. And I thought that there was enough good stuff in here that it negated some of the bad, but it is one of those books that's like deeply unsatisfying. So I think some people won't mind that, but I minded. So yeah, 3 stars for Whoever You Are, Honey by Olivia Gatwood. And if you want to hear more about it, I will link that video down below. And next up, I read Belladonna and some of Foxglove by Adeline Grace. I did a reading vlog for this at the tail end of last year. I was super convinced I was going to love these. I just had heard so many people who loved them, people online, people in real life, and I thought this first one was like just okay. I think the main character is a little bit bland. She's a little bit unlikable. I thought the story was pretty bland and predictable. I thought the love interests were pretty bland and uninteresting. It was all just fine. I gave it 3 stars. Again, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I will refer you both to the vlog and to my worst of 2024 video. And then Foxglove, I DNF'd. And it was just kind of an unfortunate case of like the author repeating the same trope again. In the first book, we have a teenage girl who is falling in love with Death personified. In this one, we get Death's brother Fate, who is also, you know, falling in love with a teenage girl. I just couldn't do it twice. You know, I couldn't do it twice in a row. It was too much for me. For whatever reason, it just felt really gross and really eye-rolly to just try to pull that twice, I guess. I wouldn't recommend these. I didn't like them, but I'm definitely in the minority, so, you know, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but not for me. And then I read A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn, and this is book 1 in the Veronica Speedwell series. And this is a series that I've been wanting to get into for a while because I've heard such wonderful things about it. It's set in 1887 London, and we're following Veronica Speedwell. And Veronica Speedwell is a lepidopterist, so a studier of butterflies. And at the beginning of the novel, she's just like living her best life, studying butterflies and getting to travel and occasionally having, you know, romantic dalliances. That is until some very creepy men try to abduct her. And Veronica can't figure out why in the world anyone would try to abduct her. Like, she doesn't have any money, she doesn't have any secrets, like she's just a girl, you know, she's just a girl studying butterflies, and she doesn't sort of understand. This man shows up called the Baron, and he kind of takes her under his wing and tries to protect her and warn her that like this is not a good thing, that these men came looking for her, because she just believes that this is all some kind of misunderstanding. The Baron kind of plops her in the lap of his good friend Stoker for protection and looking after. Thus starts a very angsty will they won't they romance, because they're both a little prickly, they're both a little hard around the edges. Veronica is a good bit flirtier than Stoker. Stoker is very grumpy, okay? Like Grumpmeister. And their dynamic, like their banter and flirting, is definitely the best part of the novel. At least it was for me. I found the plot itself and the mystery itself to be somewhat uninteresting. I didn't totally care about like the rest of what was going on. I ended up giving this 3 stars because I just thought it was fine. Like, I guess some parts of it I really enjoyed and other parts I didn't really care about. There were parts of the mystery that I found fun. There were scenes that I was enjoying myself. I liked some of the side characters. I think my expectations might have been a little bit too high. Like, I've heard people really gush about this and like how much they love it and are like dedicated to the series, and I just, you know, I thought it was fine. I will definitely be continuing. Like, I want to read more and just see if I enjoy the series more with a few more books under my belt. That was such a weird way to say that. I will be reading more of the series. I want to give it at least 2 more books before like deciding whether or not it's like for me. But yeah, it was definitely fun. It was a fun time. And I think if you wanted something like light and flirty with like an edge of mystery, you might like it as well. All right. And then I read Night Film by Marisha Pessl. And I guess I should say I DNF'd Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I'm definitely once again going to refer you to my worst of video because I go on and on about how much I struggled with this book. This is about a washed up journalist who is investigating a like cult classic horror director who's very mysterious. Nobody really knows anything about him. Nobody knows what he looks like. Nobody's got any like insider knowledge on this guy. And when this director's daughter mysteriously dies, our washed up journalist protagonist decides that he's going to look into it. The world building and lore around the horror director Cordova is very, very cool. It's really well done. It's a mixed media novel, so there's a ton of like web pages and articles and photographs and reports and stuff like that scattered throughout the novel. And all that stuff is really cool. It's very atmospheric. It's very believable. The things I didn't like were the main character, who is just sort of like insufferable to be inside the head of. He is just like mildly sexist and racist and transphobic and fatphobic. Generally not somebody that I wanted to hang out with or spend time with. The rest of the characters are relatively flat and uninteresting. The plot was really repetitive and it just kind of has like an annoying writing style, specifically its overuse of italics. I DNF'd it at exactly the halfway mark. There is a huge part of me that wants to know the ending. This is one that I might return to, or I might just thumb to the end and read how it ends. But yeah, Night Film was like really disappointing because I know so many people like love this and highly regard this book. I just never heard anyone talk about the problems that I had with it, so I was surprised. Next up, I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and I really enjoyed this one. This is a space opera sci-fi. We are following a like multi-species crew on a ship in outer space, kind of like on their way to a mission. And, you know, it's just like about the crew. Like, it's just about the characters. We get to know pretty much all of them. We follow several different points of view. It's just about their like interpersonal relationships and their dynamics with each other. We get to learn so much about the different species, about the different cultures and societies and sexualities and mentalities, religions in some cases. I just really liked it. It was a book that was very delightful, but that's kind of hard to put your finger on like exactly what works about it and what makes it really good. For me, I think it was a mix of like the author having like very interesting philosophical ideas and questions and things that she wanted to wrestle with, and like wrestling with those things through a set of like really lovely, diverse, interesting characters. And it worked for me. I really liked it. I gave this 4 stars, and in my Goodreads review I called it cozy, weird, and delightful. And I think I stand by that. It's cozy, it's weird, and it's delightful. So yeah, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, I highly recommend. And so the very last book that I read in 2024 was The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Allie Carter. And this was definitely way out of my comfort zone. It's a Christmas rom-com. But what sold me on it is the fact that it like also has a kind of Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery. And that just sounded like a lot of fun to me. So I made it my, December book of the month pick. And I read it over Christmas and I had a good time. So we have our main character, Maggie Chase, who is a somewhat famous cozy mystery writer, and her, of course, very handsome arch nemesis, Ethan Wyatt, who's like a big time thriller author. And both of them get invited to this manor for Christmas. And it's all very mysterious and it's very hush hush. And it turns out that this manor is owned by none other than Eleanor Ashley. And Eleanor Ashley is just one of the most famous, most well-regarded mystery writers in the genre. Kind of like Agatha Christie-esque. Over the Christmas holiday, she very suddenly vanishes from behind a locked door. And so we have a locked door mystery with, rivals to lovers romance. It was fun. It was fine. It was fun. I gave it 3.5 stars. It does the annoying thing that I don't appreciate in a romance where the author is constantly reminding me how annoyingly handsome and muscular and large the love interest is. He's super cute and oh so frustrating. That part was just a little bit grating, just a little annoying. Otherwise, the romance was fun and the mystery was fun, and it just had I don't know, a Christmas rom-com energy that worked. So yeah, I think especially for a Christmas read, this was just a really easy, enjoyable, entertaining time. So I had a good time with it. If you like rom-coms, I would recommend it. All right, so in January, I managed to read one book, and it was Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I really, really liked this, and I'm so glad that I did. This is such a massive book. I sort of don't know where to start when I'm talking about this. So in a future version of Earth, when shit is hitting the fan, there are some initiatives to start new Earths elsewhere in outer space. So finding planets that have similar solar systems to Earth and similar atmospheres to Earth, and sending capsules of biology and DNA and microorganisms and stuff mixed with some brainy technology to help evolution towards the next human race. And so a bunch of these experiments were sent off into space, and one of these experiments goes horribly wrong, and instead of a race of monkeys, of humans evolving, all the monkey DNA gets damaged, and instead comes a race of spiders. And so half of the book is this exploration of this spider civilization and how spiders would evolve, especially spiders with intelligence, and how what spider society would look like, and spider politics and stuff like that. It's way cooler than you might think. But then the other half of the novel, we are following the very last humans in space on a spaceship trying to get to one of these planets to hopefully save the human race, because they're the last ones. You can imagine what might happen if you found a world full of large spiders, right? It's a very weird book, but it was also a really good book. It's very philosophical, which I enjoyed a lot. It asks a lot of questions about like, what does it mean to be human, right? And I don't know, I just found it really fascinating. Like I just really enjoyed it. I will say like the two parts of the novel, like the spider part and the people on the ship part, definitely felt like pretty disjointed until the end, but I think the ending is worth it. Like the ending hits hard. The Children of Time, it was good. It was well written. I felt like it was pretty well paced for like what it was trying to do. I found all the characters really interesting and the character dynamics and just like the conversations it was having. I don't know, it was like a good hodgepodge of stuff in here. I think that if you like big, sweeping, philosophical sci-fi, you will like it as well. It's a really smart book and it has some very interesting things to say. Really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5. All right, so that is it for my recent reads. Hopefully I will be back to a normal schedule next month. I'm looking forward to that. If you have read any of these books, I would absolutely love to chat about them with you in the comments. So, you know, feel free to leave your opinions. I would love to hear them. If you just want to say hi or let me know that you were here and you watched until the end, leave me some kind of like bookish emoji, like the book stack or like the open book. If you were looking for something else to watch, I will leave my worst of and my best of videos right here for you. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I hope to see you next time. Bye!